specific and personal, and had scarred and healed, if Ruby took the proclamations of various citizens too literally, which she really tried not to do, the community. Mostly, as Ruby got out of the car she'd hired at the airport and stood in front of Sentinel Bridge with a suitcase in one hand, she marveled at how idyllic and the same it all seemed. The bridge itself was battered from the years, the wood dark and marred, but sturdy as ever. A white circle with a white 1917, denoting the year of its construction, was stenciled in the top center of the bridge, just above the tunnel that led to the other side, a pinhole of light visible in the darkness across the way. It was only open to foot traffic now, with a road curving wide around it and carrying cars to the other side a different way. For years, Sentinel Bridge was closed, and it wasn't until a community outreach and education effort in the early 90s that it was reopened for people to walk on. Ruby could have had the driver take her a different route, but she wanted to cross the bridge. "Are you sure you want me to leave you here?" her driver asked. She'd told him when she'd gotten into his car that she was from here originally, and he'd still spent the drive explaining local landmarks to her, so she wasn't all that surprised he didn't trust her directive to leave her in the middle of nowhere. He was the kind of man who just knew best. They'd just driven through the town proper, all brick, red and white and yellow, the sidewalks lined with trees whose leaves matched as early fall took hold. It was early, and the town had still been sleepy, most of the shops closed. There had been a runner or two out, an older man, Tom Swenson, walking his dog, but otherwise it had been empty. Still, it bore more marks of civilization than where they stood now. The bridge was nearly engulfed in trees, some of which were evergreen, others beginning to show rusted hints of autumn around the edges. A golden shaft of light cut over the treetops, bathing the front of the bridge in a warm glow, illuminating the long wooden walk, where the road ended, that led to the covered portion, but shrouding the entrance in darkness. She could see what the man in the car saw, something abandoned and eerie and disquieting. But Ruby only saw the road home. "It's fine," she said. She did not explain that her parents' farm was just up the road, and she walked this way all the time, that it was only a quarter of a mile from where she'd been found as a baby. She had to cross the bridge nearly every day when she was in town, so she didn't always think of it. But some days like this after she'd been away a while, she had a strange, hushed feeling in her heart, like she was about to pay homage at a grave. "If you're sure." His tone clearly said she shouldn't be, but he still took her easy wave as his invitation to go. Ruby turned away from the retreating car and smiled, wrapping both hands around the handle of her battered brown suitcase. It wasn't weathered from her own use. She'd picked it up at a charity shop in York, England, because she'd thought it had a good aesthetic, and it was just small enough to be a carry-on, but wasn't like one of those black wheeled things that everyone else had. She'd cursed while she'd lugged it through Heathrow and Newark and Denver, then finally Medford. Those wheelie bags that were not unique at all had seemed more attractive each time her shoulders and arms throbbed from carrying the very lovely suitcase. Ruby's love of history was oftentimes not practical. But it didn't matter now. The ache in her arms had faded, and she was nearly home. Her parents would have come to pick her up from the airport, but Ruby had swapped her flight in Denver to an earlier one, so she didn't have to hang around for half the day. It had just meant getting up and rushing out of the airport-adjacent hotel she'd stayed in for only a couple of hours. Her Newark flight had gotten in at 11:30 the night before, and by the time she'd collected her bags, gotten to the hotel, and stumbled into bed, it had been nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. Then she'd been up again at 3 for the 5 o'clock flight into Medford, which had set her back on the ground around the time she'd taken off.